Saint Emerentiana, the little slave who found freedom. Everybody was worried in the home of the most illustrious patrician families of Rome. The young wife of the master had just given birth to a little baby girl, but she could not feed her. It was around the year 290. Rome and the empire were still pagan, but Christianity was steadily spreading, reaching all levels of society. The family we're talking of was part of these new Christians. Something had to be done to save the life of the baby. The master decided to buy a wet nurse together with her child at the slave market. Thus, Emerentiana, still a tiny baby, was bought, since her mother's milk was needed. Of what race was she? We don't know. Slave trade was common at that time. Slaves came from the families of vanquished nations like Africa and other countries near the Mediterranean Sea. Was she black? It is possible. However, we do not really know anything definite about her family background. But God used the purchase of the mother to make His light shine on Emerentiana and to open her to the boundless depths of His love. Indeed, she found herself in a family that was deeply Christian. There, Christian values were not only taught, but also lived, and faith in Christ was profoundly accepted. Faith was truly the great reality of their lives. The martyrdom of the daughter of the family, later called Agnes, bears witness to this. The two children, Agnes, the daughter of the patrician, and Emerentiana, the daughter of the slave, grew up together. Soon, a deep friendship developed between them. They played together, laughed together, cried when scolded, because of course they also did foolish things as little girls of their age do. As they grew older, the difference due to their social classes widened. Agnes was to receive an education befitting a patrician's daughter, and Emerentiana was trained to do the different tasks that slaves were required to do in the house. This didn't lessen the friendship between them. It only deepened as they became united in their faith. Agnes was already a catechumen, but Emerentiana, who was just a slave, did not have formal instruction. She learned about Jesus through Agnes. Agnes never got tired of repeating to her the beautiful story of Jesus, which a Christian teacher related to them, how He died on the cross to save everybody, even a little girl like Agnes, even a little slave like Emerentiana. For all of us are equal in Jesus' eyes. And oh, how He loves us! He died this way to free us forever from sin, the real slavery. Emerentiana would hold her breath when Agnes narrated how God raised His Son from the dead, and that since then, death is vanquished forever. Jesus is alive, and He will never die again. They will be like Him when they die. And so, progressively, the love that captivated the heart of Agnes also took possession of the heart of Emerentiana. She loved Jesus with all her strength, and she grew closer to Him every day. Who could have guessed that so much love was hidden in the heart of this very simple, very ordinary slave girl? She didn't count in the eyes of men, but in the eyes of God, she was more precious than a pure diamond. God alone saw with what humility she accomplished her everyday tasks. She was a slave, occupying the lowest position in the society. Yet, she could have claimed to be great. After all, she was the milk sister of the master's daughter. She could have asked for favors or boasted over the fact that she was the friend of a patrician. No, she accepted a place God chose for her without bitterness or jealousy. She profited from this situation only to serve more, doing her daily tasks without any thought of being rewarded or admired. She understood that what was important was not her personal fulfillment, but the love with which she performed her work. This perfume of love pervaded everything she did. She rendered little services, did what other people didn't want to do, was faithful to the little details of everyday life. She did it with gentleness and charity, and not just out of a sense of duty. She was always ready to serve. She was poor not only because she was a slave, but because she was totally dependent on God for everything. Whether things were easy or difficult, sad or joyful, she was totally given to Him, serving Him and the people who surrounded her. And so it happened that the little slave won her freedom, a freedom found in a fidelity to the call of the God who imprinted His love in her heart. Her fidelity was a fidelity of every minute, lived from day to day, renewed every morning, and hidden in her heart like a precious treasure. What a joy for the little slave to be free! Nobody could take this joy from her. Making friends with her is receiving something of that joy. Today, Agnes is worried. She was supposed to finish weaving a piece of cloth for a poor family who could not even clothe its numerous children. But the visit of some friends the day before prevented her from finishing the work. What am I going to do now? They will be so disappointed if I don't bring the tunic I promised them. Agnes was thinking with sadness. Oh, the tunic. Why? It is finished? What miracle made this happen? Emerentiana, I bet she did it. She must have spent a part of the night working on it. Dear Emerentiana. Emerentiana, where are you? She gives herself and then she hides, happy as a child. She serves with joy and for the joy of others. This is Emerentiana. But both children were unaware that dark clouds were looming in the horizon of their lives. Christianity had not yet been fully accepted, and Christians often pay dearly for their faith. Persecution regularly broke out when the emperor felt threatened because the Christians refused to adore him as a god, or when he needed a scapegoat for political or personal reasons. Agnes was more in danger because she was baptized, whereas Emerentiana was not. She was still a catechumen. And so one day, Agnes was denounced to the authorities. What a shock when Emerentiana saw her milk sister taken away by two big Roman soldiers. They thought it would be easy to frighten her to give up her religion, but it was as if a new strength had been given to her. Her judges could not make her renounce her faith, and so they became furious and condemned her to death. Was Emerentiana there when Agnes was executed? We don't know, but she may have been among the few who came to take her body to bury it in the cemetery along Via Nomentana. Emerentiana felt alone in the big house, which seemed to her so empty without the presence of the one she cherished most. everybody was struck with grief and afraid of going out because people knew it was a Christian house. Couldn't they be apprehended also and subjected to the same end as the daughter of the house? Did not the emperor allow people to kill the Christians? It was even more dangerous for Emerentiana because she was only a slave. For her, a trial would not be necessary. And now that the patrician family was in disgrace, anybody would be bold enough to kill her, without fear of being punished. But Emerentiana couldn't bear the absence of her friend who taught her to love Jesus. Her fidelity to her was stronger than her fear, and so she decided to go to Agnes' tomb to pray. Silently, before starting her work, when everybody was still asleep, she noiselessly slipped outside the house. Her heart was beating violently because she knew what could happen to her. Her lips were moving in silent prayer as she passed the deserted streets of Rome, crossed the Tiber on the bridge leading to Via Nomentana. She stopped a short time to get back her breath. Nothing had happened so far, except when a group of Roman soldiers passed her by. But she had hidden just on time, not to be apprehended. She fell on her knees, and burying her head into her hands, she forgot everything except the gentle presence of her friend. She was startled when she heard coarse voices shouting out at her. How long had she stayed there in silence? She did not know. The field workers who had noticed her on the road knew that the tomb where she had stopped had been opened just the day before to receive the body of a cursed Christian. Now they had come dangerously nearer and were jeering at her. So, you are also a Christian? Look, she's just a slave. How can she be so daring as to defy us in the open? Quick as a deer, Emerentiana jumped to her feet and ran away to the loud laughter of the men. It was just time to begin work when she came back home, breathless but filled with a peace she had never known before. The following day she felt the same deep call to go back to the tomb. It was not only for Agnes that she wanted to go there. The light of faith which was shining in her heart had been shining before in the heart of Agnes. Like her, she wanted to be faithful to the same God. She loved him with the same love as Agnes had. She would go to the tomb not only because the body of Agnes was there, but also because in the heart of Agnes shone the love and the light of God. And so she went back even though the laughter of the pagan field workers was still ringing in her ears. She knew it could be a very dangerous adventure, but she was ready to give the same witness of faith and purity that Agnes gave if God asked her to do so. He was with her. What could she fear? The men were startled to see her thin figure hastening again to the tomb of the patrician family. They couldn't believe the frightened slave had come back. If the day before had not sufficiently scared her, they would teach her a lesson now. Silently, they approached Emerentiana, who was praying with all her heart. On the way, they picked up big stones. Here's for you, Christian. Let your God save you if he can. Emerentiana fell down at the first blow without a cry. In a few minutes, it was done. She lay lifeless, bathed in her blood, surrounded by stones. She was still like that when the family found her. They saw and they understood everything. She too had given up her life for Jesus. a deep sorrow filled them at the death of a gentle and helpful slave whom everybody had learned to love. But a feeling of peace, and yes, even of joy, was growing in them for this sister who had remained faithful to the end and had won the palm of martyrdom. Her death was not a defeat. It was a great triumph. It was a victory of light over darkness, of love over hatred. They buried her with Agnes, and the remains are still together until now. The double martyr of the young girls impressed the Christians of the time, and they venerated them soon after their death. Their story has spread throughout the centuries, and now they are venerated and loved the world over. However, people generally know more about Agnes than about Emerentiana. Together in life, they are even more united in death. In heaven, they share in the glory of those who have loved God with such a great love that they were willing to offer their lives to Him.